Good evening, everyone. I would like to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here this evening. I would like to say thank you. And I would like to say that we deeply honor and respect your commitment to this community and the relationships between this community and law enforcement. We are so happy you're here to share your thoughts. One thing I'd like to tell you all up front, if you haven't already figured it out, is that tonight being the first of these dialogues, it's a bit of a pilot program. In other words, we expect to have a little bit of a learning curve about how we can do this better. And we've heard from several of you already about that. If you would like to let us know your input on how we can structure these better and structure the attendance better, please make sure and fill out one of the comment forms that was available at the sign-in table. And we will collect those and we will use that information to create better and better experiences for all of you. So thank you for your patience with this first pilot project. They will get better and better as we go along. So, for those of you who weren't at the mayor's kickoff or do not recognize me, my name is Kathleen O'Wegan. I am the lead facilitator of a fabulous team of independent contractor professional facilitators and mediators who have been contracted by the city of Albuquerque to facilitate these meetings for you. With me this evening as your facilitation team, over here we have, they're consulting with each other, they don't know I'm introducing them. We have Philip Crump and Ann Lightsey. One of them will be your facilitator for this circle and the other will be the recorder. Over here on this side of the room, we have David Gold, who will be your facilitator, and Diane Grover, who will be your recorder. Let's see. Participation in these dialogues is limited to those who have pre-registered. The reason for this is that we want to have the circles small enough for everybody to get a chance to answer the questions that are in the handouts, and yet we need to make sure and schedule enough facilitators so that if we have a whole lot of people, we can facilitate them all. The only way we can predict that is if you pre-register. If you have not pre-registered for future dialogues, please take advantage of the sign-up sheets for those future dialogues. That will help us schedule the facilitators in the space to accommodate everyone. If a previously scheduled dialogue does not fit into your schedule, or you do not see your stakeholder group represented in the already scheduled dialogues, there is a place to sign up for yet to be scheduled dialogues. And we will do that based on stakeholder group too, so make sure and include your stakeholder group if you sign up for a yet to be scheduled dialogue. Let's see, and of course those of you who did not pre-register for tonight, we are so glad that you are here and ready to observe and hear what people in our community have to say. If there's something that one of you observers really needs to say, and knowing that you can't participate in the circles, again, please fill out a comment form. We do want to hear from you, and we're trying to find as many vehicles to do that as possible. Some of that is being in the dialogue circle, and others is by written comment form. All written comment forms will go to the city. The mayor's office will see them, Alternative Dispute Resolution Office will see them, and the Office of Diversity and Human Rights will see them. Let's see, for your facilitators, the facilitator's role in this conversation is simply to help keep the conversation friendly, focused, on task, and on time. The recorder's duties this evening are to track the essence of the information. This will not be a transcript, it will be a list of the answers to the questions from the participants, or rather a list of answers from the participants to the questions they will be asked. Better way to put it. So that's our job. It is not our job to interpret what you say. It is not our job to edit it. We simply track what you say, put it in a report. The report will go to the city. The reports from all of the dialogues will be compiled by an independent University of New Mexico statistician who is here this evening. And all of that information is then going to be compiled into a series of action items. And we will be recruiting community members to form action teams and make sure those action items are implemented. So this is a long process that's going to go on into next year. And we will keep having dialogues until everybody has had a chance to say what they need to say. And then we will perform those action teams and we will move forward. Let's see what else I have to tell you. All right, so you're in your dialogue circles now, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We do have to vacate the premises by 9 o'clock because all the doors automatically lock. So I'm going to be giving the facilitators sort of timekeeping so that they can keep on track and they have an agenda. We do need to have our closing at about 10 till 9 so we can skedaddle you all out so you don't have to spend the night. Right. Are there any questions for me about anything that I've just said to you? No? Okay. Dialogue away, and thank you so much for your participation in this process.
There's going to be 4 key questions that we're looking at. And the first question is, and these questions were given to us, and we need to answer the questions as they were given, because UNM is going to take all of the answers from all of the stakeholder meetings, all the dialogues, and do some statistical work. So we can't change the question, we have to answer the question as it's written. So the first question is, what are your goals and expectations for police and community relations in Albuquerque? So that's about community relations. Oh, and so you'll notice that these first 2 questions have expectations in them. And as mediators and facilitators, one of the things we know is that there's a saying that says, all conflict is unmet expectations. So you have an expectation, someone else has a different expectation, and when they don't meet, there's a conflict. So what we're talking about tonight is, what are your expectations? So we can move forward and see what that looks like and how that compares to everybody else in our city. So the question number 1, what are your goals and expectations for police community relations? The second question, this is just so those of you who don't have the agenda can follow along when we get there. What are your goals and expectations for police and community interactions and conducts? Okay, so the first is kind of like, how do we want things to be? And then the second is going to be some behaviors. Then we're going to have a quick break. And then we're going to talk about the specific of how do we get there. So how do you think these goals can be achieved? And what specific suggestions and ideas do you have? So at the beginning, we're going to be talking about expectations, and then after the break, we'll be talking about specific ideas.
A lot shorter, a yearly semester. And it has proved to be very helpful. For me personally, we've had some drastic problems in the past before we got up to 120. And also along, this was also mentioned before, with 911 operators, they have to be trained to understand and ask the right questions. Along with the community has to be trained to help people on the other end, whether it's the police or the 911 operator, and to need a police officer that does that.
We have to really take a look at a little farther in. Most of the people many of the people who have died they're reported as having already been mentally ill. And that means to me that they've already been either they were in treatment or they are in treatment. And what that takes me to is the fact that they're probably on psychotropic drugs or they were on psychotropic drugs. These drugs, there's plenty of evidence, and all you have to do is read the drug company list of side effects. They promote violence, suicidal thought, and homicide. They are known to do that, especially certain drugs with certain people, such as people under the age of 25. The FDA even has black box warnings on these drugs telling you this. And there's plenty of other evidence. So you have a situation where the police are confronting and supposed to handle a violent or dangerous or bizarre behavior in person to where they may or may not feel themselves threatened. And so then if we say the solution is going to be more mental health, then we're saying that they're going to be sent right back into that revolving door of more drugging and more problems. Now, caused by these medications. Now, I totally believe and understand and respect anybody who has experienced being helped by this. I can't argue with that. If they were, they were. But there is mounting evidence all over the world, not just through the FDA, of this fact that the mind-altering psychotropic drugs leads to violence and suicidal and homicidal. That makes people behave very dangerously and bizarrely.
I think as far as conduct for police, at this point, I think, again, police should be one point of entry or re-entry into the mental health system. They should be trained well enough to identify a situation where a person may or may not have a mental health issue and either triage them to someone who can make that identification as quickly as possible. However, again, there should be multiple levels of entry and the police should only be one, although we're here to talk about just police. Otherwise, however, I think that I really like that point a lot, actually. I think if we were able to, or if we were willing to pay people who are teachers or police officers what they're worth, then we would also require them to have a level of education and a specific type of education. Unfortunately, we don't pay them what they're worth, and so we can't say to them, you have to have a bachelor's and a master's in this area. And if we do have a huge percentage of our criminal population being people that suffer from some mental health issue, then maybe they should be required to have a psychology degree or a social work degree, and specifically. But because we won't pay them enough, we can't require such things. And so if we're going to ask them to do the majority of that job, then we have to provide for them to do that job. And we have to require them to be capable. So I take your point really strongly. I think it's the same thing as teachers. It's a very difficult job, and we require little of them in a lot of ways as far as education, because we can't pay them enough, or we don't want to pay them enough.
Our jail system is the largest mental health provider in our state. And so that needs to change. Every officer, I said this before, but needs to be trained in de-escalation, recognition of situations when the CIT is needed. We have COAST. I'd love to see them work more because they have a psychiatrist on board and he's awesome. He's from UNM. And then we need a mobile crisis team so that that person can get right to a scene and have a professional there, a social worker, a psychiatrist, to make good decisions.
I'm sorry, you needed a professional what team?
Social.
Mobile crisis team, where they would even have the technology to be able to use it as a resource. The third thing is that, of course, the three-tiered intervention and resource center that we talked about, that was part of the mental health task force decision of having a resource center for families and people with a diagnosis, a stabilization center, and an acute center that gives the police officers an option. Public education is so important. We need to have that. And again, I propose, and New Mexico Disabilities Association really supports CET because we've been able to offer the public something besides police intervention. If they would like that. So I like the idea of CET for additional support for families and people with a diagnosis.